it's the lead quality is better. They're closer. The sales cycle is shorter, and you're not just using buy my stuff, but you're indoctrinating them to you and your brand before even getting on a call or before even buying. And that's basically, you've won the sale before you're even selling to them.
Welcome to Markigy. Grab some coffee and let's talk about what's working in marketing, who these strategies are designed for, and how to be customer-centric while we do it. Hello, this is Leanne with Markigy. Today I'm joined by Casey Zeman, founder of EasyWebinar. Casey is a maverick, a visionary. I don't know. We could call him a lot of things, but I'm going to let him introduce his background to give lens to the conversation we're about to have.
Thank you. Thanks, Leanne, for having me. I've been in the marketing space for 15 plus years. My biggest focus has always been webinars and storytelling for building an audience, and then shoring up the sales cycle gaps by using webinars to indoctrinate your customers. And being able to use that at scale so that you can have your best performing show run over and over again. So I've been in the space for a while, I've had I started off as a course creator, creating online courses. And I've worked with various companies on doing like video marketing and consulting, like Estee Lauder, and HarperCollins. So I've done a few things, and then the most recent years I've just been focusing on the SaaS, and then just helping people with building out high converting webinars that do the selling for them. So that's
wonderfully said. Yeah. And I think that that's a lot of what I want to pull on for the threads is, there's a couple things that I think we all need to keep in mind when we do our marketing that you do exceptionally well. So I'll kind of let you tell us what the thing is that you think everybody needs to do. Like, what's your soapbox? What's the thing that if they aren't doing this, then they're missing the point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that if you're not creating content that, if you're not creating high converting content, then you're not closing your audience, right? But I think personally, everybody should be doing webinars because they're a full funnel experience with like four, the main stages of driving people in, right? And so a webinar kind of covers everything from, awareness to interest to desire to action, right? Those four things that every funnel experience should have. But commonly what you see is like those funnels are like they're spaghetti funnels where you have like different siloed funnels doing all of those four elements of a marketing funnel. Like awareness is like a completely different campaign run over here. Interest, maybe they're driving people to like a PDF guide or something like that. Desire, they're not painting the picture of how they can solve the problem, talk about the problem, and solve the problem, and then the action of them coming through is that final stage, and oftentimes people have like four different funnels, four different ways to do it, and it can be very confusing. But what I like to think about is I like to think like webinars kind of cover all of those things if your top of the funnel is not necessarily cutting it. Like, the power of social media right now is that I feel like on social, I see those four elements in the content that people are putting on social, right? Like they're casting a wide net with awareness, they're building the desire up, the interest up by talking about how they've helped, and then the desire, is only after they've explained how the result can come, and how I think that you, as this person that's having this problem, can actually benefit from the solution. And then the action of like, hey, coming in. Now I see that happening more and more on social media, but I still find that like the webinar is this one stop shop encapsulation of that whole journey, basically. So someone is, they're coming in, they have the awareness, like you have an ad that has like the title that you're solving for someone, that's what the webinar topic is. That's the title. They're interested, they see the awareness, they're aware of the problem that they have, they're interested in what this is, so they opt in. And then we drive them into ways to get to the webinar workshop. They go through the workshop. There's the desire that is actually gained through that workshop. And then the action is them, booking a call with you or buying your program straight away from the workshop itself. But the whole idea is like the webinar does the heavy lifting and has all these components in it. It has the, like, here's the problem here. If here's the problem that you're faced with, right? I understand your problem because I've been there before, and I tried all these different ways to find the solution, just like you have, right? And they didn't work at all until I used this uncommon solution right here. And this uncommon solution became the thing that gave me the win. And and by the way, I'm going to show you how you can use this uncommon solution yourself to gain the win. And a webinar that does that has those elements, and then of course has testimonials that back up that those cases, you're going to be closer to a sale than you ever were before. And I feel like the webinar journey is a faster way to achieve that. And people that come through a webinar are just higher quality than people that don't, right? Instead of them having 5 different touch points with you, the webinar leads that come through, it's almost like they have those touch points. And so it's the lead quality is better. They're closer, the sales cycle is shorter, and you're not just using buy my stuff, but you're indoctrinating them to you and your brand before even getting on a call or before even buying. And that's basically, you've won the sale before you're even selling to them. So I think everybody should be doing a webinar, no matter what the industry, in my opinion, to leverage those things and rise above kind of the noise of AI and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I think that one of the threads I wanted to pull on that, like, I see as I hear you talk, and I want to make sure that everyone that's listening or watching really clues this together, is the storytelling of it, right? Because the way that you ran through the, like, not the framework for, how to do the webinar, is that's a story. You're telling these micro moments in the story, and then you are bringing someone along a journey. And that is where the artistry is.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. It's the storytelling is where, so there's, people buy for 2 reasons. Logic, you're connecting with them on a logic level and a heart level. If you don't have story, you don't have the heart that creates the empathy that connects with them. And that's the thing. People they want to relate to somebody. And in your storytelling of a webinar, that's what comes up. And so when I do my storytelling, I talk about, as I just said, like, I talk about like that I was a course creator and I was always trying to sell my stuff. And I couldn't. I tried posting on forums. I tried, posting on social media. I tried to buy leads and then email those leads, and no one would just go. I created a sales page. No one was buying off of it. And mostly wanted to give up. And by the way, during all this time when I was trying to become a course creator, I was going into foreclosure on my home. And so I was feeling a lot of pressure there. I knew I needed to make this work, but it was a big struggle for me. And I do remember those 2 a.m. late night evenings where I'm like working, trying to figure out what I'm doing. I was doing a lot of busy work that just wasn't getting any result until a friend of mine told me about webinars. And I was like, okay, so you get on live, cool. This is back in the day when it was just like GoToWebinar was the only type of webinar platform. So I did it. I got on these webinars and I started running these events where I was just doing free content, free, no pitch content, where I was and I was promoting it using Facebook events, and I started getting people showing up. And 20, 30 people would show up, and I'd run these once a week, and it was this slow burn process. But at the same time, I was building my email list, and I was also, what was a very interesting thing is I was building a rapport with the people that were coming in. And I noticed that the same people were coming in more than once. And so I continued doing this for like 2 months. And while I was doing it, I had people saying, Casey, do you have something I can buy? Because I was just sharing all the stuff. I was just like vomiting information. And so as soon as they started asking me, do I have something to buy? I was like, well, I have this product that I wrote, I built called YouTube Revealed. It's a course all about how to get on the first page of Google with YouTube. And they were like, I want it. And so I started selling it at like $97. And I had a couple guys come to me and say, like, Casey, you should be charging way more than $97 for this program. And so I tested it out and bumped it to $197. And off of a webinar, and I made $2,000 in sales off of a webinar. One of my first webinars that I ever did, and I was terrible at running webinars. I was like, I'm a stutterer. I'm a classic oversharer. Okay, I'll ramble a lot. But I ran this webinar in my wife's parents' farmhouse in Iowa in the dead of winter, and we were in this back trailer where the heater was blaring, and I was using this busted up PC that I was using for running this webinar. There was no camera, onboard microphone, and it was just like all the crappiest conditions you could possibly think of. But all said and done, at the end of that event, which was 2.5 hours long, I made like 10 sales. And I was like, holy crap, this stuff actually works. And so that was my first experience with running webinars. And after I had gone through that like holy, I made $2,000 in a couple hours, I realized the power of it. And then my goal was to systematize it. That was the next thing. But the way I ended up doing that is I had a guy who came to that webinar where I sold it at $197. He said, you know what? I'd love to promote this to my email list. I'd love to promote your program to my people, but the product has to be $1,000. And I said, okay, I guess I can just increase the price to $1,000. So I did. I priced it at $997. And the only thing I added was 2 coaching calls, like an onboarding call and another call in 30 days. And that was enough. And what happened surprised me like beyond belief. I had the same number of sales from the webinar I did with his people as I did at the 197, but at 997. So I'd made $10,000 that day, and I had fewer refunds. In fact, no refunds, because they were higher caliber. I had created a conditional money back guarantee saying, hey, if you go through the program, consume all the content, and you're still, and do the homework that I'm asking, and you still can't get results, then I'll give you a full money back. I'll give you your money back, And so I created a conditional guarantee, and because the caliber of people were better, everything was a little better. And so that helped me to understand that all this was possible. And so then I systematized basically selling my own program at $997 and I just needed to sell 3 a week to be able to hit the goal that I had at the time of getting to $12,000 a month, so that I could stop consulting. I was doing some consulting work still, like retainer work though, right? So it was like my time. So the way I did it is I just ran one webinar. My goal was 30 people on the webinar. My goal was to get 10% of them to buy, so 3 sales, and that would total 3,000. And if I did that every month, it would be $12,000 a month. That was the benchmark, and I started to hit that mark. And then I started to increase rapidly over time. It was just like some people, there would be more, some less. But in that first year of running webinars to sell my course, I went from $15,000 the year before to $245,000 in sales selling my courses just from webinars. So that was my first experience. And I tell that story to my audience so they understand my own story as it relates to running webinars to promote my programs and product, and how I reverse engineered what I needed in terms of the revenue to be able to pivot my business and then of course systematize it. And now of course we use automated webinars, pre-recorded videos that stream in real time with the experience of live, and we use those to scale up. So we have clients that use those same methodologies that sell $10,000 to $20,000 a day off of those type of systems. So it's just taking the webinar experience, the indoctrination, the storytelling, as we've talked about, and using that as the vehicle for sales. So
yeah. And I think that story really shows a number of things that it takes, right? It takes an email list. It takes intent, right? Because the people that it takes pricing strategy and messaging and placement.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, if we're thinking about like an MQL, we know that we can qualify that marketing lead from a webinar at a higher place than from still social ad.
Right.
Because they've shown the intent, because they've gone through that journey, and they have built that personal connection from hearing your story, right? It's a great story. That is like from a horrible, like, just not to put words in your mouth, but like I would feel a lot of despair if I was going through foreclosure, and I would be very stressed out, and it would feel huge and big and scary. And then
No, I was going to say it was huge, big, and scary. It was all those things, because I went from a real estate job to then basically losing that real estate job, not having money to support me and my wife. And this is before we had kids. So it was just us. But then, going into, not being able to pay your mortgage, and then going into foreclosure where, months go by. It was very challenging. And then all the while trying to get this thing to work. And I promised my wife I would try to save the house, which I did. I was able to modify my loan twice. I modified it twice. And so it was one of the hardest times in my life, pivoting out of one thing into another that I wasn't sure was going to work, but I had this sort of faith because I saw other people doing it, and I started to see the results, slowly chipping away. But yeah, it was challenging. But I'll tell you what, 2 years after that time, when webinars started to work, I ran my first $1 million launch, and it was a pretty incredible experience to go from that to that, and then also to pay off the second off my house, which was that was another thing that I was, had always been kind of looming, right? So I paid the second off, and it just felt good to be able to do that. And so that's all a true story, and I share that story just because of the sheer fact of resilience, and there has to be there has to be hope, there has to be a little bit of a plan. And that was the journey that worked for me after having tried everything else. It was the thing that, and at the same time, it allowed me to create a personal connection with an audience, right? Like it helped me to know so many different things. It helped me to validate my course by talking to people. It helped me to validate my offer that I was giving to them. It helped me to understand what their pain points were by asking, about them and hearing about them, and also seeing what business they were. So the data that I also received from being there and doing those high touch webinars were invaluable for aligning how I can give them the solution to their problem. Because of course I ran webinars for the fulfillment of my program as well. Like I did coaching via the same webinar, and I would bring people on and I would talk to them about their business. And so it became this tool for me that was invaluable because it helped me to grow my business. And it also helped me to keep my clients happy and to teach effectively to the people that I was serving. So it did all the things for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that that's one component that is a core theme of this podcast, is that this is human centered, right? And because you are a person with a story, and that helped you in your journey becoming a founder, right? You didn't choose to be a founder of something that you gave no cares about.
Right.
Right? You chose something that you believe so strongly in, that that's where you chose to put your focus, when you could have focused on all these other things, or when, the stakes were really high. This is where you put your bets. And I think that when we can put that kind of faith and resilience and planning into something and then have it work out, that it gives more credibility to that thing that we're really trying to say is the strategy that you got to do. It's not that there was like no stakes and it was growth at all costs, and you just kind of like flippantly put like $5,000 investment into some piece of software because it might work. You're like, no, I need this to work. This has to work or I am screwed.
Yeah.
My words. But like,
well,
and
yeah.
I think that is something where it translates from B2C to B2B because it's how people work.
Yeah. Well, and then, yeah, exactly. So because I had success with it, I wanted to figure out a way to scale that process up. So that's when I started talking to, at the time when you needed developers and coders, where now it's a little wonky at the moment. But I talked to, some software engineers, and I said, I'm interested to figure out how to automate this process of using the power of webinars, right? I had done all this research, gotten a lot of data. I figured out how to run webinars that convert. I just needed something that would duplicate me. And so I talked to them, and we came up with a platform at the time called EasyWebinar plugin, which was a plugin for WordPress that created what are called automated webinars, that are basically pre-recorded webinar sessions, right? That have the experience of live. They run live. You can have polls and offers and chat and things like that happening while it's automated, but you don't have to be there. It's pre-recorded. And then all the data, who your people are, how long they stay. If they click an action button, you can have follow-up experiences, segmented follow-ups based on their actions. And so that's what we built. And then eventually it became EasyWebinar.com. And we added a live stream component as well. So now it's a fully holistic webinar tool that has both a live webinar side where it does no latency, high definition streaming up to 50,000 people. We can go higher probably. And then we have the automation side for people that want to create these automated experiences that help them to have a higher quality lead and sale come in. And we have a lot of B2B companies using it for onboarding, using it for sales acquisition. And so that's what we've been able to create. And again, it was from from it working for me, from it being a vehicle that I needed to be able to sell the one to many and scale from there. So
yeah. I mean, and that's really, what we're all trying to do in one way, shape, or form or another is we're trying to scale. We're trying to sell from one to many. We're trying to build relationships with our customers that they're bought into, so that they trust us. And because we're trustworthy, because we are putting forth the effort to show them what they need for their decisions, for their awareness, interest, desire, action. So I know that our conversation has really kind of deep dived in a few things. And I feel like that's kind of like the story or the anecdote that like proves your point. Is there any like disclaimers or times where you're just like, this will work for this case, but not this case?
Right. I mean, I hear it a lot from people that think that webinars won't work in in a service-based business or, in a highly regulated business. But to be honest with you, we've seen it work time and time again in the financial service space, in the real estate space. We have people that would run virtual open houses with our platform, which and then just do lead gen that way. And then also, some people would create like first time home buyer webinars. People in the financial space, we've seen it worked really well with getting very specific around the instruments by which they, do it's financial advisory, right? Like maybe their focus is 401k planning, or maybe their focus is something else. But leading I think that this is why it works so well, is that it leads with education and it creates transformation. And those two elements, unless you can figure out a different way to bring those elements in, you're going to have a hard time doing it. Again, as I said, like people are trying to do this in social media where they're trying to do this in multiple pieces or parts. And some of it is working, but at the same time, they're still driving people to workshops and webinars to complete this journey for people. I find that content, it's always good to tease content. Like for me, I like to have a video that maybe touches on interest or awareness, and then another video that touches on desire, and the need, right? And then you can have the action of like join my workshop type of thing. And so I think it's good to seed those videos out, but oftentimes someone might only get one of those 4 or 5. And one of those 4 or 5 is not the complete journey. And so the journey is complete in a workshop, in a webinar. So I think that that's what makes it so compelling. And that's who it benefits. Now, I would say, if you're trying to build an audience and you are trying to sell, you have an offer and a program and an expertise you're trying to sell, webinars are perfect for you. I know people sometimes will do a webinar to promote other people's products. That does work. And I don't know, I guess I would only say that in good faith that if you are trying to steal something or dupe somebody by using storytelling to dupe them, that is not who this is for. This is an ethical. A webinar is a very powerful platform, and it should be used for good, not evil. And so I think the disclaimer would be: don't use it for evil. Use it for good.
Yeah. Fair, absolutely. I can double down on that sentiment. I hope that nobody uses any of the strategies on any of my podcasts for evil.
Right.
you know,
Yes.
wherever that line is, is a personal
Yeah.
choice, but I hope that, everyone does the right thing. And I think that ethical and integrity in marketing is definitely part of what we're chasing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I enjoy that. Thank you for
No
sharing
problem.
that.
Yeah. You're like, I've not heard that yet. The ethics part of that.
Well, we've had ethical conversations about like how to use data and like privacy and
Mhm.
compliance and things like that.
Right.
But I think that, you know, before we even get that far in a marketing strategy, that, the intention of not manipulating people for evil is a good
Yeah.
starting point. Um,
I mean, I always say, a webinar is like a window into you. So it's like, if you are, people can sniff out, you know, somebody who's not thinking in terms of good and doesn't have their best interests at heart. So that's one thing. Another thing is like sincerity and value work very well off a webinar. And all you really need are those two things to have success. You don't necessarily need the fanciest scripts. You don't necessarily need the fanciest presentation. You could just literally be talking to your people and sharing value. And sometimes my best webinars are where I ask them questions and find out their problems and answer and try to help them in real time. So, I think that it's a window into the ethics of the person that is wanting to use the platform.
yeah, it's really Superman versus Lex Luthor.
Totally, totally. Because
Yeah,
we can see right through Lex Luthor. I mean, he's like, come on,
he's clearly a bad guy.
he's
Uh,
such a bad guy.
he's clearly in the wrong. Um, so I, I once again, I'm still so tickled that this is where we ended up. But to kind of come back to the discussion prompts, I want to kind of shift gears and I want to talk a little bit about the future of marketing.
Mm.
So, we've loosely mentioned AI. It's okay to talk about AI. It's okay to skip it, but where is the future marketing going and where do you think it should go? Are they the same thing?
I mean, I think that there's two prongs of this. I think that we are still going to be a needed commodity with as experts, as mastery. So implementation, execution, without like a strategist brain necessarily, because AI right now is generalized content, right? It's pulling from the general information that's out there. So you're going to have sort of like the average of all of it together is what it'll give you. And to some degree, that information is great because you can use it to springboard off of. But my belief is that will still be, we still have, like, the AI can execute and speed up processes and do things, but we'll still have to have a level of mastery to be able to help the people we're serving. And that's where our mastery comes from: time and experience. And I don't think that AI can replicate that yet. I think that, as I said, it will take the average of all of it, of that's been uploaded, but not necessarily the cream of the crop, the best of the best. So what it takes is the mastery we have to still teach the AI and have components of the mastery still applied to people. So, like, I think what's valuable right now is human to human connection, human to human strategy and planning, and the execution is going to be performed more by the AI, right? And so I think that that's still going to be there. Like, as an example, we're solving a problem with our platform because now you can do AI webinars, right? So what that means is that instead of you taking 2 to 4 weeks trying to build a webinar, from the presentation deck, trying to figure out what your topic is, trying to figure out how you're going to sell off of it, and build all the pages of a webinar funnel, the email sequences, building polls that are intended to understand your customer, what your customer is going through, and what their pain points are. Now our platform will build it for you in 5 minutes, and I've taught it the level of mastery for webinars. Like, that's one thing we've done is we've taught it a level of mastery. Now, I'm not going to say it's the total mastery. I'm going to say it's been taught a specific methodology that is not generalized on the regular, AI that you're going to find from Claude or ChatGPT. So we've taken that and we've built that into here. And then this does the execution of a webinar. So it builds out the webinar script, builds out the webinar presentation layout. It builds out the pages of your webinar. So a high converting registration page based on the actual topic and all of what was done in the workshop that it wrote for you. And then it creates the thank you page and webinar, waiting room page, and then the email sequences from before the webinar and then post webinar experience. And then it will build the polls based on what your goals are. So if your goals are to understand your audience more, it'll create polls, poll questions, poll answers, all based on that. It will build out the polls for maybe if you want to validate if they really need your program. And so it will take you through that process and even create an offer for you. So you can tell it what your offer looks like and what you're trying to do. And it will build little title cards that will get people to push into wherever you want them. So if you want to take them to an external sales page or a book a call, or internally with EasyWebinar, you can now sell within the webinar. So we'll have a easy pay option where they could buy right inside the webinar, and then they'll buy your program while they're in the webinar itself, and then they have access to your program. So we see AI working with completing processes like this. But I will say that there's still that part of the mastery that needs to be plugged into the webinar itself. So we built out this really high converting webinar. If you were to read off the script, you would get sales. But your own storytelling, your own testimonials, we don't know those things. And so those things are components that you would add in to complete that 100% mastery. But that's where things are at still. I think that AI is going to be used so much more to keep track of things. Right now, as I said, I think it's more of the execution. Maybe eventually it will come up with the higher end strategies. Obviously, the more you feed it, the more it will know that. So I think the direction people are trying to go in right now is like creating their, brains, right? Like replicating their brains, like taking the content that they have in their head and putting it into an AI that remembers and can execute at that level. And I think that's not all the way there yet. And so that's where the mastery, I think, is still important for people. So yeah, those are my beliefs.
I agree completely. No, that was a great way to like kind of come back to the question. As you were talking in my head, I'm thinking that what it's doing is allowing people to have that project management of an expert without the expert, because an expert sat there and told them, hey, duh, you need a thank you page. Like, duh, you need to keep people engaged and doing actions throughout this. And not to say duh in a patronizing way, but if you are, net new at trying this channel or tactic or strategy, and all of these things haven't occurred to you, this could, like, something like just putting on one webinar could easily turn into like full-time, full month of work. It's and then a lot of experimentation and a lot of money. And so that investment being streamlined and having the expertise on how to execute it, and just have it kind of put into place in the buckets. And I think that that's how we scale. I think that's how we leverage our expertise and then put in the story in the way that it makes sense, because AI still can't tell how it gets it just wrong enough to not be the expert.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's where we're still coming in, and that's where we're needed to still be there to kind of put the final puzzle piece together, so to speak.
Yeah, to orchestrate it.
Yeah. Now, eventually, they maybe won't need the final piece, but well, that'll be a scary time when that happens.
And that's going to be bots buying from bots. That's a whole different future.
Yeah. That's where we're going there. We're getting there. My AI avatar talking to, doing a podcast with your AI avatar eventually,
with an audience of AI avatars. And
exactly. Yeah.
What last question? What is a question that someone should ask you, but they don't?
A question that they should ask me. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if everyone knows that that I studied opera, and I did music theater, and I did theater in Chicago, and did some shows and movies and things like that. Most people don't know that I was an actor, and a singer. So let's see what question they would ask.
Wait a second. Yeah. That's so exciting.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's you can ask, you know what? You can ask me about any passion projects that I might be doing. And then I would tell you, I have a podcast show that we put together called Urban Family. You can go to urbanfamily.com and check it out, the first episode. But it's all about families that you sort of choose, right? It's like for me, it was all about adoption because I have 2 adopted sons, and so we put together this show to create, and it's a fictional show, but it's to create adoption awareness. So the show is actually about different families coming together that are all in a support group, and they all have adoption somewhere in their family, whether they have adopted kids or they're adopted themselves. And so we have this show, and we're trying to get it to be a TV show, but right now we did it as an audio series, and so we're trying to also find out a home for the audio series itself as well. So that's one of a few different projects that creative projects that I sort of work on, produce, and things like that.
I love that. And I love that during this conversation, we've really seen a blend of the personal and professional. And I think that we need more of that. When I hear like chosen family, like that's something that's huge in my personal life, is that the people that I am sending Mother's Day cards to, the people that I am calling and checking in on every day, we are connected by blood. They're people that I choose. And they choose me, of course, I'm not just a stalker. But,
yeah, it's a two-way street typically. That's the goal anyway.
Yeah. And I think that it's just that it all comes back to the same premise that makes our everything worthwhile and successful, is the human connection, the being of service, the being a part of a community and being a community member.
Yeah, I think so. Because then, it's like you have people who've got your back, and you've got their back. It's like with my wife, I always say that we're like 2 turtle shells back to back, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like, fighting off the bad guys. And I think that's super important. Yeah. So like, it's always good to find a group of people that you connect and resonate with. And for me, yeah, it's like I have my just family, you know, my wife and our 3 kids, and you know, um, and then of course my family, all the rest of my family who are very supportive, you know. So
Right,
it's
right.
I think it's important to have all those pieces. Yeah. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
no shade to my actual family. I love them too. Like they're like no,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. No, it's
they're not
that's
chopped
why
liver.
it's called urban family, because it's like the
It's
family that you
complicated.
kind of like adopt while you know to kind of maybe in a big city, but really honestly my co-creator and I, you know, I have adoption experience, and has a mixed race family, and so it's those two things coming together, and we explore identity, race, and a few other elements in the show itself. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Um, all right. Well, I want people to reach out to you. Where can they find you the easiest? Is it LinkedIn? Is it where can they
You
hit you
can
up?
go, I mean, if you want, you can go to CaseyZeman.com. There's a newsletter there you can check out. You can also find me on Instagram or at Casey Zeman and just reach out, or go to my YouTube channel, which is also Casey Zeman. You can see some new videos that I post, and different podcasts. The podcast that I did with Leanne will be there as well. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of you and your story and your expertise. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, I can be reached at info@markigy, markigy.com. Professionally, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. I do spend a significant amount of time, more than I probably should there.
that's
And then yeah, and then, I would be remiss if I didn't ask nicely if you could please like, review, and subscribe. It always helps algorithms.
great.
Uh, and so, yeah, thank you again for joining me, Casey.
Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for watching.